Hi there. We're going to talk about this day in history for September 29, but first I'm going to tell you about this coffee mug. More of a soup mug, really, with its squatty configuration. I picked this pretty little thing up at the Kolomoki State Park in Georgia. It's a historically significant park. It is the oldest and largest woodland Indian site in the southeastern United States. It was occupied by American Indians from 350 to 750 AD. It contains Georgia's oldest Great Temple Mound, standing 57 feet high, and it dominates two smaller burial mounds and several ceremonial mounds. The park's museum is built around an excavated mound. If you're ever over that way, check it out. I'll put a link in the description to a website about the park, and you should take a look. They do offer camping there, although we didn't camp. We met a very nice young couple with a small child. I don't think the baby was quite toddler age yet, so maybe about a year old, and they had packed up on bicycles. They had a little sidecar for the baby. Packed up on bicycles, rode their bicycles to the park. Anyway, Kolomoki State Park, check it out. And with that, we'll get on to this day in history for September 29th. And we're going to start all the way back in 106 BC. Now, Pompey the Great, do you remember him from yesterday? Pompey the Great was born Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus. He was a Roman and political military leader, as you might remember from yesterday's entry. He was born in Picenum, Italy. He died in about 48 BC, as we mentioned yesterday. 1780, Benedict Arnold's accomplice is sentenced to death. British spy John Andre was court-martialed, found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging on September 29, 1780. Andre, an accomplice of Benedict Arnold, had been captured by patriots John Paulding, David Williams, and Isaac Van Wart 6 days earlier on September 23rd, after they found incriminating papers stashed in his boot. It was the discovery of these papers that revealed the traitorous actions of Benedict Arnold to the U.S. authorities. Upon hearing of Andre's capture, Arnold fled to the British warship Vulture and subsequently joined the British in their fight against his country. As you might remember from a few days ago, Benedict Arnold was looking to sell West Point to the British in exchange for the day's equivalent of 30 pieces of silver and a military officer's commission. So you could see why his name is synonymous with traitor. In 1789, Congress voted to create a U.S. Army. To some it seemed like a technicality, but on this day in 1789, President George Washington succeeded in getting the first Congress to recognize the U.S. Army under terms of our new Constitution. In 1901, Italian-American nuclear physicist, gone fission, fermium, Nobel laureate, and father of the atomic bomb, Enrico Fermi, was born in Rome, Italy. He died in 1954. In 1907, the great singing cowboy Gene Autry was born in Texas. Gene Autry, perhaps the greatest singing cowboy of all time, was born on September 29, 1907 in Tioga, Texas. Tioga is about halfway between Denton and the Red River, along US 377, if you're interested to go check that out. While still a boy, Autry moved with his family to a ranch in Oklahoma where he learned to play the guitar and sing. The young Autry was quickly attracted to a new style of music that was becoming popular at the time, which combined the traditional cowboy music popular in Texas and Oklahoma and the folk songs, ballads, and hymns of Southern-style country music. Known as country western, the new sound was popularized by musicians from the East Coast and the South who had never been near a horse and couldn't tell a stirrup from a lariat. Hundreds of these newly minted cowboys were soon donning cowboy hats and boots and affecting what they thought were western drawls. Hundreds of these newly minted cowboys were soon crooning popular western ballads like Tumbling Tumbleweeds all around the nation. Well, Autry was also no cowboy. He was at least a genuine Westerner who had lived on a ranch. After a chance encounter with cowboy humorist Will Rogers, who encouraged his dream of singing professionally, Autry made his first recording in 1929 and for several years performed as Oklahoma's yodeling cowboy on a Tulsa radio program. Following a stint as the star of the Chicago-based National Barn Dance radio show, he signed a recording contract with the Sears label, which also marketed a Gene Autry guitar through its famous catalog. Autry's lasting fame, though, came from his career as the film industry's favorite singing cowboy. His first movie, In Old Santa Fe, was eventually followed by nearly 100 other films that made him one of the most popular stars in America and vastly expanded the audiences for country western music around the world. I've placed a link to a selection of Gene Autry performances in the show notes for your perusal and enjoyment. He died in October of 1998 at the age of 91. On September 29, 1913, Rudolph Diesel, inventor of the engine that bears his name, disappeared from the steamship Dresden while traveling from Antwerp, Belgium to Harwich, England. On October 10, a Belgian sailor aboard a North Sea steamer spotted a body floating in the water, and upon further investigation, turns out that the body was Diesel's. There was, and remains, a great deal of mystery surrounding his death. It was officially judged a suicide, but many people believed and still believe that Diesel was murdered. Diesel patented a design for his engine on February 28, 1892. The following year, he explained the design in a paper called Theory and Construction of a Rational Heat Engine to replace the steam engine and contemporary combustion engine. He called his invention a compression ignition engine that could burn any fuel. Later on, the prototypes he built would run on peanut or vegetable oil and needed no ignition system. It ignited by introducing fuel into a cylinder full of air that had been compressed to an extremely high pressure and was therefore extremely hot. 1918, Allied forces break through the Hindenburg Line. On September 29, 1918, after a 56-hour-long bombardment, Allied forces breached the so-called Hindenburg Line, the last line of German defenses on the Western Front during World War I. 1932, a 5-day work week is established for General Motors workers. 1939, Nazis and Communists divvy up Poland. On September 29, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union agreed to divide control of occupied Poland, roughly, along the Bug River, the Germans taking everything west and the Soviets taking everything east. 1941, Babi Yar Massacre begins. The Babi Yar Massacre of nearly 34,000 Jewish men, women, and children began on the outskirts of Kiev in the Nazi-occupied Ukraine. Between 1941 and 1943, thousands more Jews, Soviet officials, and Russian prisoners of war were executed at the Babi Yar ravine in a similar manner. As German armies retreated from the USSR, the Nazis attempted to hide the evidence in a rather grotesque and undignified manner, which I will not detail here. Numerous eyewitnesses and other evidence attested to the atrocities at Babi Yar and became a symbol of Jewish suffering in the Holocaust. And if you want to read those details, you can see the link below. 1953, a New York Times article claims Russians want the American dream. An article in the New York Times claimed that Russian citizens wanted the American dream too, private property and a home of their own. The article was one of many that appeared during the 1950s and 1960s as the American media attempted to portray the average Russian as someone not much different from the average American. 1954, CERN was established. The European Organization for Nuclear Research, popularly known as CERN, was established by 12 European governments on this day in 1954. 1966, Chevrolet introduced the Camaro, which would become an iconic car. 1988, Stacey Allison of Portland, Oregon, became the first American woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest, which at 29,035 feet above sea level is the highest point on Earth. Allison, a member of the Northwest American Everest expedition, climbed the Himalayan peak using the Southeast Ridge route. 1995, Hispanic American voting rights advocate Willie Velasquez was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, posthumously, if I remember correctly. 1997, American painter and sculptor Roy Lichtenstein died. In 2008, Dow suffers largest single-day drop. After Congress failed to pass a $700 billion bank bailout plan, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 777.68 points. At the time, the largest single-day point loss in history. The huge decline followed the bankruptcies of Wall Street brokerage firm Lehman Brothers, Savings and Loan Bank Washington Mutual, as well as the Fed's announcement that it would provide an $85 billion bailout for insurance provider American International Group, better known as AIG, to keep it from going under. In 2009, an 8.1 earthquake causes a tidal wave that claims 189 lives in Samoa, American Samoa, and Tonga. That Pacific Rim has a lot of geological activity, a lot of earthquakes, a lot of rumbling, a lot of moving of the earth there, those tectonic plates shifting around. 2015, researchers discovered a biofluorescent hawksbill sea turtle in the waters off the Solomon Islands. Though biofluorescence has been observed in captive reptiles, this was the first occurrence seen in a wild reptile. And that's going to wrap it up for this day in history, September 29th. As always, links to my research are posted in the show notes, along with physical address, in case you'd like to send me a coffee mug. And don't forget to check out some Gene Autry music while you're at it. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And feel free to share this if you found it interesting. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Come on now, you can do it. You can do it. I know you can do it. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, get your mic. That is a long sentence. In 2000, already read that one. Okay. Yeah, I think that works. Don't make me squeak that pig again.